Hello there. Thank you for being a Patreon supporter and welcome to another bonus episode. This week, Adam, my husband, is joining me to give some book recommendations because he likes fantasy with a very high silliness quotient. So we have a bunch of book recs for you. And I'm curious, if this is also your jam, what books do you recommend? I would love to know in the Patreon page or in the Discord, or you can email me. Either way, thank you so much for being part of the podcast Patreon. Enjoy the bonus episode. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Sarah.
Thank you for doing this.
Anytime.
Okay. So you are going to tell me a series that you recommend and why.
Sure. So the series I just finished is the Space Janitors series from Jim Hines. Terminal Alliance, Terminal Uprising, Terminal Peace. Okay. I remembered all three names of the books. I'm very pleased.
Nice job.
I'd read the first one a long time ago and then kind of forgotten about it. And I was looking for something to read. And I think you asked something about them. And
do you want to read about Space Janitors?
Right. No, recently. You were the one that found the first book for me.
Right. And then the third one had come out and you hadn't realized.
And I hadn't realized that the second one had come. So I read the second and third ones just very recently. So it's done. And that is somewhat outside of my wheelhouse. I'm much more of a fantasy person than a sci-fi person. I prefer wizards, generally speaking.
And in city settings. So you prefer magic urban fantasy.
Yes, magic urban fantasy, which sounds like a porn shop.
Right. It does sound like a porn shop, but it's more on the gritty side than the cozy side, right?
Yes. But the thing about that is, and this is what I specifically thought I wanted to talk about, is that it has to have a decent silliness quotient. So, like, I was chatting with someone at work this week and he recommended something and, for a director, because I was saying how I like to binge things. I very much like my content to be endless, and I like to start with a series of characters and visit with those characters over and over and over and over and over again.
You like a good lore.
Yes. I don't generally like small snippet standalone stories. I like long stories. So anyway, so he recommended some 8-hour movie from some Hungarian director. I don't even remember the details now. And then emailed me later and was like, I was kind of joking about this, but this is one of my favorite directors, but be aware it's pretty bleak.
Oh.
And so that is something, my response was, the real world is pretty bleak. I like my entertainment on the silliness side of the scale much more than on the dark and gritty side of the scale. Now, that said, a lot of what I read, like the Dresden Files is probably my favorite book series of all time. It starts off, at least the first few books are very much noir. It gets less noir as it goes on, but it's, bad things happening. It does have some amount of darkness in it, but it's balanced by a particular amount of silliness. So back to Jim Hines. I started reading Jim Hines with the Libriomancer series,
right? Which
is 4 books. The first one is Libriomancer. I'm not going to remember the names.
That's
of the
fine.
other 3.
I can put them in the show notes.
But that's also one of my favorite series because, much like the Dresden Files, it's a wizard, but it is so chock full of pop culture reference and jokes and silliness that it makes it fun and not just, gritty, dark story, bad things happen, must avert apocalypse. Must avert apocalypse with quips. Also, why is Spider-Man my favorite superhero? That's why Spider-Man is my favorite superhero.
He's a smartass.
Because he's a smartass, yes. So, and that gets back to, again, the silliness quotient. Why do I like the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Because they load it up with jokes. People complain about some of the later Thor movies, too much jokes, not enough story. Inject that into my veins all of the time. I don't want Zack Snyder's gritty, dark, justice, whatever. I want my fantasy stories, my apocalyptic fantasy stories, with a healthy dose of goofiness and silliness and jokes. So that's going back to the Space Janitor series from Jim Hines.
I mean, it's Space Janitors.
Right, it's Space Janitors. It's a really amazing sort of setup that he has. Gender is basically completely fluid throughout this whole thing. You have some species where they're all female and they still manage to have babies. You have some where they all use they as the base pronoun. You have some where they are born as male and as they age, they change to female. And then you have the humans who are generally speaking male and female, although there are some, at least in one of the later books, there is a non-binary human character, but they all take names from historical humans. So you have a coded male character named Marilyn Monroe, and you have a coded female character named Wolfgang Mozart, for example.
As you do.
Yeah. But it's fun and it's funny and it's a good story that is told with a healthy dose of silliness. And that's my jam.
So what do you think are the elements of silliness that really work for you in a book? Because for me, silliness also comes with the knowledge that the book, the narration, the story itself is not taking itself too seriously. You have to not take yourself seriously in order to be silly. You actually have to have a lot of confidence to be silly because you aren't taking yourself too seriously.
Yes, although this is a difference that I make in real life too, and I think I'll make it for books and other entertainment as well, is there's a difference between taking a situation seriously or taking what you do seriously and taking yourself seriously.
Yes.
So yes, these are people who are in serious situations where they have to do things to avert apocalypse.
Right.
But there's always time for a pop culture reference or a joke or a stop at Burger King or whatever. In the Jim Hines series, it's a lot of pop culture reference because the world is a essentially post-apocalyptic Earth, and the rest of the galaxy is fine, but it's a lot of the humans looking at historical records of humanity, and therefore you can put pretty much any reference in there that you want. Bibliomancer series is similar in that the magic system is based on pulling magic and pulling items and things out of books. So if there is a book, unless it's been locked by the powers that be, which is, a plot point, you can pull anything out of it. So that basically gives you unlimited pop culture references that you can throw in there.
Right.
You can find a way to work anything in, and he does, and it's super fun. And, as you know from our conversations about this, mid to late Gen Xers, give me those 80s and 90s and late 70s pop culture references. I will never get tired of it.
Oh, yeah. Somebody on Twitter brought up fashion plates, and I had to just sit back and think about the smell of fashion plates because they had their own smell, and so did the crayons. Now, what happens in the Space Janitors series? What is the premise of this? You don't have to summarize all 3 books.
No. So,
but what is, I understand there's a post-apocalyptic Earth, and obviously they're cleaning something. What is the sort of through line?
So there was a plague on Earth. That turned all of the humans essentially feral. They lost their, what would make them human, ability to think and logic and reason and feel.
Okay.
And, a alien species, the Krakow, not the city in Poland, found a cure, and I'm using air quotes here, for the humans to essentially make them sentient again, but they've also used that to make them soldiers. They're they can't feel pain and things like that, but they are sentient and logical and they're able to use their brains again, based on this cure. And the story focuses on Miriam Adamopoulos, aka Mops, who is the leader of a janitorial crew on a Krakow spaceship. Most of the humans in this world are soldiers, but some are on the maintenance crew. And something goes wrong. It's been a while since I read the first book, so I don't remember enough to even provide spoilers. Something goes wrong, and Mops and her mostly human crew have to take over running the ship, because they were wearing hazmat suits, they weren't affected or something like that. And in doing so, they learn a lot about the backstory of what happened to humanity, and that leads them to do things, which is about as much as I can say without giving up spoilers.
Right. And so they also have to take control of the ship because if they don't, it'll crash and they'll die.
Yes.
So they're both creating their sanctuary, their home, and their crew and their found family, but also trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, and it's definitely a found family.
Which is another jam that you like.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Putting together disparate people and creatures and species and having them all get along.
Become the Avengers, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
So are all things the Avengers for you in some one way or another?
No, but, for a later bonus episode, if you want, I could tell you how the Jewish calendar is like the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
How the Jewish calendar is like the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Sure.
I'm so mad you've never told me this, and this is only 10 minutes.
Or any religious calendar, really. But, so you've got your high holidays.
Wait, hold on. I cannot believe that you have this whole thing and you never told me this.
We've definitely spoken about this.
No, we have definitely not spoken about this.
So.
You're in so much trouble. I can't believe you didn't tell me this. All right, fine.
Whoa.
Oh, you're in trouble. Okay.
So you've got your major holidays. For Jews, that's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. For
Passover,
Christians, for Christians, hold Passover for a second. For Christians, let's say it's your Christmas and Easter or whatever.
Easter, right.
Those are the Avengers movies. Everybody goes to church. Everybody goes to synagogue. Everybody gets together to do the thing. Then you've got I'm not sure. I can't really speak to equivalence on a Christian or other religious calendar. I've got to stick with what I know here. You've got your other holidays, for Judaism. You've got Passover. You've got Hanukkah. You've got Sukkot. You've got Shavuot. You've got the
Simchat Torah, Yom HaTzmaut.
So you've got the holidays that are big holidays, but that aren't necessarily everyone gathers at synagogue holidays.
Right.
Those are like your team up, but not quite Avengers movies, like Thor Ragnarok, where you've got Thor and Hulk, or, some of the later Ant-Man movies where you've got Ant-Man, Wasp, and some of the other heroes banding together, but it's not a full-on Avengers movie because, you have a Seder for Passover in your home. So it's not like your entire synagogue congregation, but it might be 10 or 15 people.
Right.
And then you've got your weekly Shabbat, your Sabbath. That's just like your regular run-of-the-mill standalone superhero movie.
So, Iron Man 1.
Iron Man 1, right?
2.
Captain America 1, Thor the First. Yeah, all those kinds of things. So, yes. So, any kind of cinematic universe where you've got different levels of
So you have
build-up.
ensemble, minor pairings, solo movies.
Right. And your holidays in pretty much any kind of calendar, but again, Jews, the ones I know, are like that.
I'm so mad you've never told me this before. You've definitely never spoken this out loud. You might have told the kids, but you didn't tell me.
Huh.
Yeah. But you're totally right, because you have the ensemble and then you have minor pairings and then you have individual movies that feed into those larger combinations.
Yes. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I'm very pleased. That was a very good short TED Talk. What are you reading right now?
I'm kind of in between stuff.
We have a little literary mystery too. I'm asking people in the Discord about this.
We do have the literary mystery of the new Ben Aronovich folly novel.
So basically our literary mystery, which I talked about in the Discord, is that there's a new Ben Aronovich, apparently, I've been saying it wrong, novel or novella in the Peter Grant series, which Adam and I both really, really like, but for completely different reasons. And the new one takes place in the U.S. and follows one of the FBI agents who knows Peter. And it's got to do with some magical mystery in the upper Midwest.
Yeah, Wisconsin.
Early June. It was released in the UK in audio, digital, and hardcover, which kind of blows my mind from a business perspective because hardcover printing novellas is like a lot. Well, now it's released in the US, but only in the hardcover for $28. And it's a novella, so it's little. Right. And audio. I put a hold on the audiobook with the library and it popped right up this morning, which means that I was one of the earliest to put it on hold. I have received 0, and I usually receive promotions about the Aronovich, because I've reviewed them. So I'm definitely on some lists for them. I received nothing about this book. Like, I didn't know about it until you told me, and there's still no ebook. So Clay, who's in the Discord, who's a librarian, looked it up and found that you can, if you're in the Kobo Global Store, there's an ebook. But if you set up your US address or log in with a US address, it says it's not available for you. For some reason, there is a non-compete or something blocking the digital release, which is really the only format you want it. Is that what you want? Do you want piracy? Because that's how you get piracy. I'm sorry to say, like that. If you have this kind of a non-compete and you have readers who want to read a book, they're not going to be like, oh, I'll settle for the $28 hardcover. No.
Nope.
Or I'll try audio. Now, I could probably persuade you to try audio. It's only 5 hours.
Yeah.
And at the speed I listen to, it's going to be like 3, if that. Because I have now gotten up to like 2x speed when I'm listening to audiobooks, which I know if there's a narrator listening, they now hate me. I'm sorry. But the fact that there's no digital book is banana crackers to me. Like, I don't understand it. But that is our current mystery. How do we get the ebook of Winter's Gifts?
And I will say, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, that is another series that I like because it properly balances the seriousness with silliness and pop culture references.
But the thing is that I find the most frustrating. I know that there are ancillary novellas that take place outside that don't have Peter in them. Peter is still the best point of view character for me. I really like all of Peter's point of view because he's the one who's got the most silly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so I get like frustrated when it's too much of another character. And I'm like, I kind of miss Peter because Peter doesn't take himself very seriously and is also very chill and very funny.
Yes, which I think is why when he does the alternate character point of views, he does them in novellas or sometimes in the comics, but he does not do the full-length novel with anyone's point of view but Peter.
There was a recent one where it was case notes and there were lots of footnotes in the text. And in one of the footnotes, I think it's who's the historian?
Yeah, it's
the historian is writing it down, but there's a footnote that says, Agent Reynolds, Peter says that the next time the two of you are standing in a skiff, he will tell you the whole story. And I'm like, okay, that's the novella I want. I want Reynolds and Peter in a skiff talking shit about things. And if you're listening, you don't know, a skiff is a secure space, usually used by government people who have high security clearances that has no phone, no window, no electronics. They're very specified in how they are built. And when you're in them, you can't have a cell phone. Like, it was a big deal recently that there was a security meeting and a bunch of Republicans walked in with their cell phones. Yeah. And it was a skiff. And people were like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So yeah, I want the two of them in a skiff. That would be such a great story.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, that's the Abigail novella.
That's the Abigail
where
novella.
It's essentially her journal and what's his face? I can't remember. It's some stuffy British name.
Yeah, pause something with a P.
Yes. Anyway.
Abigail is also an excellent point of view character. But again, she's funny.
Right. But the footnotes that are things that he added to Abigail's journal because
the journal was part of the record of the folly. Right.
And she was essentially writing in 13-year-old British slang.
Right. Which was great, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But that book is brand new and we cannot get it digitally and it is weird. But yet another series that I can re-listen to that, and I have re-listened to that. There are books that I skip and there are scenes that I skip, especially in the first one. There's a really bad death in the first one that I skip that whole friggin' chapter. Just like, nope, skip. Like, they roll up to the house and I'm like 30. Okay, we're good now.
Yep.
But anyway, what are you reading right now? Because we can't find Winter's Gifts except in audio.
So right now, and we're getting ready for a trip. So I'm kind of in between things. I'm loading up. The last book in the Cat Drummond series, and I now can't remember the author's name.
I'll put it in the show notes. Fear not.
He's South African, and it's an urban fantasy series set mostly in Cape Town.
Oh, I didn't know it was set in Cape Town. I have to tell Laura.
Called Hope City because it's a future Cape Town that's not Cape Town anymore. That one I would say actually probably falls lower on the silliness scale than some of my other ones, but I really like it because I do like urban fantasy series that are not always New York or London. They do seem to gravitate New York, London. The Dresden Files is Chicago. Another series that I love is the October Day series, which is San Francisco. I do like it when they are in different places because I like learning about different places, and usually there's some local history in there.
There's some that are set in Atlanta. There's some that are set,
So anyway, that last book just came out, so I'm going to read that while we're away. And you were kind enough to get an arc of the Jim Butcher's other series, which is the Cinderspire series. This will be book 2. Those are really long books.
Oh, that'll keep you occupied.
But those are fun because they are shifting point of views, which I don't always love, but sometimes the point of views are cats in these.
Well,
and the cats are the best characters in that series.
Obviously.
So if you like arrogant, obnoxious cats talking to you, the Cinderspire series by Jim Butcher is a good one. And I think I've got something else in my queue that I'm not thinking of right now.
That's cool. Thank you for doing a bonus episode with me.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'm right downstairs.
Yes, I know. But also, I don't have a lot of men on my show. So thank you for, balancing out, some of my gender quotes.
Arg.
That was some excellent masculinity. I'm very proud.
No
Shall we
problem.
go have lunch?
Let's go have lunch.
All right.